Hello, welcome back, and it's a pleasure to have in the studio Asif Mal. How are you, Asif?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Kent, for having me.
Now, Asif, you're originally from Pakistan, but you're based in the UK now, but still very much focused on the situation of Christians in Pakistan. What is that situation?
Well, it's like, you can get somebody else out of Pakistan, but you can't get Pakistan out of them.
Oh,
so
okay.
Even though I'm living in Britain for the last number of years, I still am very much in touch with my people on the ground. And yes, I still, my heart goes out to them, to their suffering, to the discrimination that they face on a day-to-day basis, and the persecution that they face, and the false charges of blasphemy that they have to face, and about 300 of them currently languishing in prisons.
Wow.
And a number of Christian girls who, due to poverty, working in the homes of more affluent Muslims, and the life is very difficult for them. Obviously, they're obviously verbally, physically, and often sexually abused as well.
I guess they're very vulnerable there, yeah. Being away from their normal families.
Correct.
Yeah, wow. On the news, when we hear a story about Pakistan, it's invariably bad. Some terrible assassinations in recent years, the terrible double murder of a Christian couple last year, beaten, dragged and burnt alive, horrible stuff. But for an everyday Pakistani Christian, obviously that's not happening to them. Are these just extreme cases we're hearing about, or is everyday life difficult?
I think that those are basically a way to tell the ordinary Christian on the street that this can happen to you if you try to raise your head. If you try to get out of line, we will make sure that you are put into line in that way. And the sad part is that in the case that you mentioned of two Christians burnt alive, this was basically they owed some money to the owner of that clean factory. And then when he asked and they could not pay, they said that you should become a Muslim. And when they refused that they are not going to become Muslims, then they brought somebody else to accuse them of blasphemy. And then mob gathered, and in front of their children, they were beaten up, their bones were fractured, and then they were tied to behind a tractor, dragged all over the village, and when they were semi-alive or semi-dead, and then they threw them in this
into the brick kiln. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
And the man was probably there were reports that he was almost like dead, so he didn't resist, but the woman was still trying to come out, and they had these long kind of sticks, and they were with them, they were trying to push her back.
Oh,
and
that's terrible.
And yes, and when local Christians went eventually, and all they had was just some burnt bones that were left. And that happened in front of their three children. The oldest one is probably 6 years of age.
Wow. So the fact that Pakistan has these blasphemy laws that says you can't speak against God, you can't speak against the prophets, including Muhammad, you can't destroy or deface holy scripture. It seems like a good idea, but it's being used to settle personal grudges and as a weapon, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's used to settle personal score, personal vendettas, not let anybody be elevated in their job or in their business. And due to those sort of reasons, and I say to my Muslim friends, look, when when somebody accuses somebody falsely of blasphemy, that's when the actual insult of your prophet and your religion is taking place. When an innocent person goes down, is burnt alive, is killed, or their house is burnt, how do you think that the honor of your prophet is restored in this way? And then you see the blasphemy, the definition of blasphemy in any dictionary in the world is to insult God.
Yes.
And to saying that insulting the Prophet of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, is blasphemy, is blasphemy itself, because in not so many words.
Because it's elevating a human to the status of God, yeah.
Because in not so many words, but basically you're saying that Muhammad is God, and that's blasphemy. And so the blasphemy law of Pakistan is blasphemous itself, and for that reason alone, it should also be condemned. But obviously many people are being killed due to it, and so I think that all people all over the world having even an iota of conscience should come out and condemn it
Yeah.
and play their part in removing it.
Well, look, I don't sit in the Pakistani parliament. You don't either, Asif. What can you and I do about, unjust laws in somewhere as far away as Pakistan?
I think that you live in Australia, I live in the UK, and Pakistan is a country which is very heavily reliant on Western aid and trade.
Yes.
And so if we talk to our governments and say that you need to link all our aid, both military and economic, and our trade agreements with the situation of human rights and the situation of religious minorities, including that of blasphemy law, that is a language that might do the trick in the end.
Okay. Well, there's a challenge for us to, get on to our own legislators about that topic. Thanks so much for your time today.
Most welcome. Thanks for having me.
We'll be back in just a moment.